All right. Got the t-shirt just because I felt like wearing it. Got the overlay. I tried to do a album by album rundown of the plot up to Transhuman Ascendant, which just came out a couple days ago on Instagram. I think I failed. I don't really know how Instagram works, but I think the story kept getting cut off. So we're going to do it here, and I'm going to try to make it concise and not boring. So, album 1, Technotheism. The overall plot of the album is about a small group of humanity, basically all of the humans that are still humans who are left. They're on an orbital because the vast majority of humanity has essentially turned into a global singularity. The hardware for which is basically a geosynchronous satellite array. And this was well before Starlink. Just gonna put that out there, but it's essentially Starlink but with lasers. Like we're talking 80-90% of humanity has basically just dissipated into the greater global consciousness, and there's an orbital of about 30,000 people who are the remainder. They include rebel forces who are fighting against this because the singularity takes away individuality. Once you sublime into the unknown global consciousness, that's it. You're just part of this giant, huge collective, and you lose your humanity in their view. So that's who the resistance is. They have to pass through this giant, what's called the omnisphere. I think there's a cat. They have to pass through this giant omnisphere. That's the Void Walkers. It's a whole ordeal. I'm not going to get into it because we're just doing a brief survey. They do some stuff on Earth in order to put an end to the singularity. Ultimately, they fail and they die, and the singularity wins, and all of Earth eventually just becomes one giant bubble of mass consciousness. That's technotheism. Metamtechnosis begins an indeterminate amount of time later. We canonically do not know how far after technotheism it happens, but at this point, the singularity has just become this swarming mass of different rival consciousnesses within itself. They've basically ascended to godhood. It's just a big ball of gods who are constantly fighting each other and consuming each other and switching sides and creating rivalries and I can't think of the word for agreements, but and that's how they live. And an increasingly dominant faction decides, for various reasons, to recreate humanity in their own image. So they're not really using the Earth, basically. It's a cool science experiment is one angle. There's many angles that they have for this, but they rebirth humanity in their own image, which is basically humanity cybernetic hybrid. They put them back on Earth, but with strict control over culture and technology and even electricity. They live in the dark, both metaphorically and literally. What they don't intend is that this duality, cybernetic nature, just hyper evolves humanity in a way that they were not expecting. And after a number of generations, again, we don't know how many because this is from the perspective of those humans, eventually they just kind of look like normal people, because the cybernetic, what you would consider implants or like the robotic components of humanity, get smaller and smaller until it's basically just looking like humanity. Well, that's developing. Again, there's this mass public that's completely ignorant to technology as a whole. It's being kept secret by the temple, who basically, essentially, you can think they work for the omnisphere, the dominant majority of the omnisphere. But there is a small group of rebels who literally underground begin to experiment with technology, or at very least with electricity. They're hunted for it, but they are not found yet, not in Madame Technosis. They eventually, I guess literally, give birth to the Decryptor, who is basically a freak of genetics who has the as yet unseen ability to hear the communications in the Omnisphere. They train her as a soldier because she is essentially one step ahead of the enemy, because she can hear them talking. So, you've got the big cloud of gods up there telling the temple what to do. They send their orders. She can hear it, basically. So they train her in weapons. She eventually leads the Aberration Omega, which is the kind of rebel insurgency, to storming the temple, because the temple contains the secrets to what's going on, they presume, and they want to figure it out. That's where Madame Technosis ends. That's the very end of Decryptor. Transhuman Ascendant picks up exactly where that leaves off. That's Secrets Uncovered, is them storming the temple, essentially. What they find is a whole bunch of machinery that they obviously don't know what it does. They do not know what it is. And then a whole bunch of reinforcements come and basically, slaughter a lot of Aberration Omega, but the Decryptor and a handful of people manage to escape and basically go into exile far, far away from the core city. They're, at this point, humanity is just spread huge, but most people live essentially like it's the Stone Age. That center core where the Omnisphere communicates with the temple, they just leave, basically, and just go into hiding, essentially. While they're there, they have some fun adventures. They meet the Seer, which, because people don't have technology, but they're still trying to develop technology, is a computer built out of people, built out of humans. It's biological computer that they can use to briefly talk to a different faction of the Omnisphere, a faction that actually supports them, a turncoat for the AI, essentially. Tells the Decryptor some cool stuff, and then some things happen, and essentially, let me just pull it up here in case I'm missing something important. They got to go back. They got to go back to the temple because it's a story. The Decryptor is the key to everything. So they come back just as the temple is finding the original underground rebel base, the one that they had to abandon after most of their people were killed. And more or less, the Decryptor, of course, she's the key to everything because this is a sci-fi story, and she's got special blood, and she's got to sacrifice herself to save everyone because of course she does. And then the end of Transhuman Ascendant is very much just The Rise of Endymion by Dan Simmons, the fourth Hyperion novel, wherein humanity achieves a singularity without sacrificing their individuality, because everyone's got nanobots in their blood, which we knew because it evolved from before, but only the Decryptors were active. So upon her death and spreading of what is essentially this activation virus, I guess you could consider it, everyone experiences everything. Global consciousness, they hear the voices of everyone, living or dead. They hear the voices of the planets. They hear the voices of everything, of the void. But they experience everything in an actual singularity, but they don't have to give up their individuality to do so. Again, that's literally just the end of Rise of Endymion by Dan Simmons. Sorry, it just is. General overview, we skipped a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm doing my best. Thank you for watching.